Let's get into the book of Romans. First things first, what are the main values that we see in this book? Well, the main value in Romans is the value of knowing God and being known by God. This is a theme that runs through the whole Bible, but it is especially important for us to see in Romans because Paul is writing to a church that is not a Jewish church. He's writing to a Gentile church, people who have no background in Judaism at all. And he wants them to know that they can have a relationship with God simply by putting their faith in Jesus Christ. And God doesn't just want to be known, God wants to be praised. So another big theme in Romans is the theme of God's wrath. And that doesn't mean that God is angry at us. It just means that he is serious about his holiness and he will judge sin. And so if we don't put our faith in Jesus Christ, we will face the wrath of God. But if we do put our faith in Jesus Christ, then we can escape God's wrath and we can receive his mercy and grace. All right, now let's get into a brief summary of the book of Romans. The book of Romans is divided into 16 chapters. In chapters 1 through 8, Paul talks about the universal sinfulness of humanity and the universal need for God's righteousness. We see in these chapters that no one is righteous, not even one. And we also see that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. But there is good news because God has provided a way for us to be made right in his sight. In chapters 9 through 11, Paul talks about God's promises to Abraham and how those promises are going to be fulfilled. In these chapters, Paul talks about his heart for Israel and how God has not rejected his people. And in chapter 12 through 16, Paul gives practical instructions for living as a Christian. He talks about things like how we should live, how we should work, how we should treat other people, and how we should pray. So why should you care about reading this book? Why should you care about reading Romans? Well, first of all, this is one of the most important books in the entire New Testament.
And if you understand Romans, you will have a better understanding of the gospel.
You will have a better understanding of your salvation, and you will have a better understanding of how you should live as a Christian. Secondly, this book was written to the church in Rome, but it's also written to you. These letters were not just written to the people in Rome. They were written to all the churches throughout the whole Roman Empire, and they were written to all believers throughout the whole course of history. So this letter is just as relevant for you today as it was for the church back in the first century. So my challenge to you is to read this book and to put its truth into practice in your life. As you read, ask God to help you understand and apply his word.
And remember, the main value that we see in Romans is the value of knowing God and being known by God. So as you read,
Ask God to help you to know him more and to make him known.